So somehow I got myself into a director position for a publicly traded tech company. And I was like, this was never even part of the plan.
Yeah.
But then that kind of put me in a space where I realized if I ever wanted to grow my business to that caliber, this is the seat that I need to be in.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing like, hey, you know what? Half the time, these people, like, it's publicly traded. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time you're winging it. A lot of the time you're just kind of figuring it out. And so that kind of gave me the confidence. I was like, okay, when I'm ready to kind of take that step and pursue something full time and my own venture, it's okay that I don't know. It's okay that I don't have an idea of how to do it, because that's what everybody else is doing.
Hi, friends. Hope you guys are doing amazing. I am so excited for this week's episode. It is with one of my best friends, Christina Lim. I am so happy to have you on here tonight. I feel like this is so overdue.
Just 4 years.
Just 4 years, right? Like, so fun story. I used to live with Chrissy. And we would just have the most amazing conversations that can go on for hours. Like, we could literally talk all night. And we would say how, like, man, like, we should start a podcast, or we need to film this. We need to film this.
Yeah.
And that was 4 years ago. And here we are. So I'm glad that we're finally making this happen. Full circle. It's just so cool to see even just where life was at during that time, and just seeing where we're both at now. And I just feel like there's so many things that we can talk about tonight, but one of the things that I really wanted to like highlight is just your incredible work ethic. You're one of the most hardworking people, if not the most hardworking person, next to my fiance, Carlos, because you guys just, as long as I've ever known you, like, you have never stopped working, but it's not even like from that unhealthy, like, workaholic mentality, but like just your appetite to learn and just figuring it out, like when it comes to growing a business or starting a new project, or, you know, really anything. Like, Chrissy puts her all into it, and I just think this is just going to be such a valuable conversation for anyone who just feels like, I don't know how to do that, or like, I don't know where to start. Like, you just really just take things into your own hands and you just make it happen. And so you're someone who's just like such an inspiration to me and such a great influence in my life. And so I'm just excited to like share you with everyone.
And I feel exactly the same about you. And that's why we get stuck talking for hours at a time.
Yeah. I feel like there's just something so special about your association, like the people that you surround yourself with, like, you know, just even looking at just how you grew up and just some of the most random jobs you've had, like even just from the time you were like 15 and like moving to Vegas, like you always find a way to just meet the coolest people. And the crazy stories, like we can go on about like some of Chrissy's travels, which I really do want to talk about because like I think that's really cool. But at the same time, like, like I think just who you are, like you really attract good people in your life because you're such a great person. And
see, I've always felt like I'm just so lucky. I'm like, why don't all these great people want to be in my life? You being one of them.
Amazing. I mean, you guys, like Chrissy, like I could go on and on about her, but like so just, I mean, from outside looking in, okay, like her and I met while working at a nightclub here in Vegas. And you know, it's easy to really just get caught up in that industry and that be your only thing, and that's totally fine. But something that I think really I related to Chrissy a lot on is like, I feel like we always wanted more in our lives, just outside of just our jobs, like not even just like about cocktailing, but just like we always wanted a great life. And not everyone desires that because they don't desire the work that comes with having to build a great life, right? And, you know, you can see Chrissy, you can stalk her Instagram, and she's like, she travels the world. She's super adventurous. If you ever go on vacation with Chrissy, it's like on all the time.
It's
for
extreme.
Adventure. It's adventure. Okay. You're not going to be sitting on a beach next to Chrissy. You might have like be on a beach, like swimming with sharks, but you're not like,
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be something like
something
sprinkled
like
in.
Adventure.
Yeah.
But then, you know, and she's a beautiful girl. But her work ethic is unmatched. This girl has like a black belt. She has traveled the world. She's built all these businesses. She got her master's. Like, what has Christina not done?
Slept.
Well, you know,
I'm actually working on that. We just had that conversation.
Yes.
I'm actually prioritizing that in my life.
But you know what's so funny you say that is like Chrissy could literally fall asleep on this interview if I wasn't talking to her and having an engaging conversation.
Hence why I have my coffee. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. It's insane how she can just like do we confirm you have narcolepsy? Like, you can just fall asleep at the drop of a hat? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've just gotten really good that I'm like, I got to maximize every single moment I can get rest.
Yes.
Which is not this case anymore, which is way better. But that's probably why it was so bad.
Yeah. So, we can start now and then going back. Like, so now you have a couple of businesses that you're running. Mm-hmm. But going back, like, Chrissy, when she was getting her master's, like, you thought you wanted to work for the FBI. Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of got inspired. Like, I knew I wanted to either be with one of the 3-letter agencies. So I didn't know if it was specifically going to be like CIA, FBI. But what I was really pursuing after and what I went to grad school for was to be part of the Foreign Service. So I always had every intention that I wanted to create a life to where I was doing what I loved the most. And that was helping people and traveling.
Okay.
And those things kind of just coincided with this really just unique job where you're going to all these different countries, you're helping all these different people.
Now,
you're being able to have a different type of day every single day.
And it wasn't like you wanted to be like an ambassador to a country. Like, didn't you study like something with like that involved economics, like focusing in Asia? Like, this was very specific.
It was very specific, but the doctor I worked for, she's absolutely incredible. So Dr. Howard. So she really kind of inspired me because she was like this badass that was doing like counterterrorism. She's been kidnapped before.
Wow.
She did the lingerie football league. So let me tell you what kind of like idol she is.
She was like
incredible.
A movie.
Yeah, so I took a lot of inspiration from her. And so that's kind of how I ended up down that path.
Okay. And so you were in grad school and you're thinking, you were like, you had this plan and you even like wanted to like move to Asia at some point after getting your master's. And then in the midst of all that, how did you find yourself like in the rabbit hole of like entrepreneurship, personal growth? Like what sparked that?
The funny thing about it is, plain and simple, grad school sucks. Nothing is going to prepare you
to go back to school
for the amount of work and effort and just how drained you are and like wanting to cry at the end of the day from grad school. And so for me, I was like, I need to find an escape.
Yeah.
And so my escape kind of became podcasts.
Okay.
So I started kind of down that rabbit hole. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not even surrounding myself around the type of people that I want to be inspired by, but I can outsource it. So I started reading a lot more. I started getting podcasts, and it's kind of just started building upon each other, where it was a lot of personal growth. It was entrepreneurship. And it was also kind of leading me down this path where my whole life, I've never really been told, like, you can only make this an hour. I made sure that every job I did was always kind of based off of, if I work harder, I'm going to make more money. And I realized that I'm like, I'm getting into this career that I'm going to spend the rest of my life, and they're going to tell me, hey, this is your GS grade in the government. You can only make this much money. Even if I can do a million other things and I can prove that I can like go that extra level, I'm still only worth that much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't okay with that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, and I think people do get so caught up in like what they get paid, and they're like, oh, you know, I'm more valuable than this. And it's like, well, if you really think about it, it's not that you're not worth being paid that much. It's just that they've already taken the budget and allocated a certain amount of money towards that role. Now, yeah, I mean, down the road, if you can show in numbers, not just like march to your boss's office and demand a raise, like how much revenue you are bringing that company, that's one thing. But it is like that, yeah, that misconception of like, yeah, you are worth more than what you might be getting paid, but the position that you're working with is only worth so much.
And you kind of reach, I mean, like a theoretical glass ceiling too, where you're capped off.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that because I've never been the type to be told like, this is what you can do. And that's kind of where you're going to be at.
Yeah. Now, was it like a specific like personality or an author or an expert in the field that really got you thinking? Like, who was the first person you really started listening to and you were like, like I might have to rethink this plan that I have?
I think I just kind of like immersed myself in it. The thing I started realizing too is all these really successful, all these very inspirational people, they're all friends with each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you get into like the Jay Shettys, you get into the Ed Milet's, Jenna Kutcher, like all of them, you start seeing like, oh, that's their circle. So that's why you start seeing all of these same concepts and ideas that kind of cross over with all these different people.
Yeah.
And so that kind of inspired me. So while I was going to grad school, I also pursued my certificate in nonprofit management.
So cool.
it was more for me, it was like an escape. I was like, well, I have to get through this. I've already put myself in it.
Yeah.
But that's been me this whole life. Like I do hard things just to kind of put things in perspective. Like I take calculated risks so I can understand like, hey, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything else.
Yeah. And was there ever a point in time, because how long was your program?
For
your grad school?
2 years.
And how deep were you in when you started like looking at all these different opportunities or like
probably the first year.
Okay.
And in grad school, you're not supposed to work. I was cocktailing throughout the night. So I was like working at the nightclub, super crazy life. And then having to be 7 a.m., you know, get all my grad school stuff done. People are like, hey, let's go out. I'm like, I can't have a life.
Yeah.
Like, I got no time.
And like, did it ever cross your mind, like, okay, I'm learning all of these things. Like, I want to pivot in my life. Like, did it ever cross your mind, like, okay, should I quit grad school in the middle of it? Or has it always been like, you know what, let me just push through. Let me just get this degree. And because, I mean, I feel like once you do get to that post-grad, like, level, there is a lot more than just, like, what you just got your master's in, right? And what you're learning, the people that you're meeting. So did you ever think of quitting grad school?
I didn't, because I really did love the work. And I loved the research, and I loved doing that. I just couldn't see myself doing that for life.
I see. Yeah. And you know, while working at the nightclub, like even that time, I mean, it was great, you know, because it pays really great money and you're able to support yourself while you're in grad school. But I think some of the coolest stories that have come out of this, it's like, it's not even like some, you know, crazy spender comes in and spends like a ton of money. It's more so like you meet the coolest people that you would not think. But I think a lot of people miss some of those opportunities to get access to these people because they're not in those spaces. Like during the day, you're listening to so-and-so's podcast and the next, you know, they're at your table and you're like having like full on like meaningful conversations with people at your table. And I feel like there was so much value even in that while you were working at the club, right? Yeah.
There was one so crazy. So there was a podcaster, JLD, John Lee Dumas.
Yeah.
And so I'd always listen to him, and I recognized his voice. And then one night, I was like, why does this guy sound familiar? Ended up being him. He was in Vegas for Tony Robbins' event.
Oh, my gosh.
And so we had such a great conversation, ended up having lunch, learned so much from him. And I'm like, okay, so I'm in the right space, doing the right things to gravitate the right type of people towards me.
Yes. And I feel like, and even who your closest circle is, like that's who these same people are. Like a lot of the girls that we hang out with are girls that we did meet at the club, like working at the club together, but everyone's kind of like gone on to create businesses or like almost like leveraging their time there to be able to put it into something that's going to like set them up for like a completely different career. And I feel like that's been a lot of just our friends, like in that same friend group. Like it's so cool to see.
It's crazy to see how far everybody's evolved just in the last few years.
I know. Like I was just, when I had our friend Katie on, who we were all working at that same club, like we were just, talking about just wow, like so much can really happen in a year. But when you look at the last 10 years of our lives, like it's so crazy and so cool at the same time.
And I remember very specific moments of us always thinking like, can you imagine what it's going to be like in a year?
Yeah.
Or in 2 years?
Yeah.
How different life is?
It's so nuts. Like I was thinking about, just even the last, like the 3 years of what these 3 years have been. And you've started like these companies out of the pandemic, which I think there's something to say there, because not many people, or I guess majority of people, I think found themselves either like really set in their ways, like super complacent. Like they were like, oh yeah, like this is great. Like I can kind of coast through life. You had people who were pivoting in these markets, like changing careers or starting businesses. And to what on the outside be like, well, why would you start a logistics company? Why would you start a driving school in the middle of this like pandemic or, crazy times? But you guys did it anyway. And I mean, to see where that is now, it's like,
I mean, I would have never guessed.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And what's so cool is like, and something that I did want to bring up is just like while you were learning, just about, like more of like the entrepreneurial way and like paving a way for yourself, like creating opportunities for you, like when you were starting other businesses that you started before, like, it's not like you went to grad school to get your MBA. Like, how did you figure it all out? Like getting an LLC and like, how do you know like all the rules to stay compliant and all of that and like hiring employees? Like there's so much that goes into it that like, what did you use as a resource? How did you even like know where to look? Like what was your friend in this during this time?
It's kind of crazy because it's almost like two opposing things. So I'm very methodical. So I'm a researcher. Like once I get excited about something, I have to know like every little thing.
Yeah.
So I'm on Google, I'm on YouTube, I'm on whatever I can be. But then I think my biggest advantage that I've had is I don't really wait until I can walk to run.
That's good.
I'm methodical, but I just go and run. I fall on my face sometimes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and that definitely happens.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen. And I think people are afraid to fall on their face. Like, they don't want people to see them fail.
But you're going to live.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, there's really not, I mean, your risks you're taking are so calculated.
Yeah.
Like, the worst case scenario, if I knew I lost everything, I had nothing, I'll go wash floors.
Yeah.
I'll go work, wherever I have to work. I'll make money. I'll survive.
Yeah.
Like, I've lived in crazier situations. Like, I'm not scared.
Yeah, but I think that is the difference, though, and that mentality, I think, that holds a lot of people back, because I think once you get to a certain place of a level of success or reaching a certain goal, like you're out of the survival level of life and you're starting to feel a lot more comfortable. It's like some people just don't want to go back to starting over. But it's such a shame, because it's like, okay, even if you did fall on your face or you did lose everything, like you said, like you still have your health, you still have your life, and at least you tried, which is like what most people wouldn't even like have done, And so like, did you even have like anyone in your life that could like help guide you, lead the way, or it really was Google? Like Google was your friend?
No, I didn't have anybody. And that's kind of the thing too, where I felt like my family has always kind of played it safe. And so I was like, you know what? I want to make more. I want to kind of build a legacy. I want to be able to pass that down to my kids. And so I'm like, if I don't know all these things and I don't learn them now, how can I pass them down?
Yeah. Yeah, that is so good. I want to pivot a little bit because we haven't really talked much about like your background. Like your mom is German, your dad's Chinese, but he lives in Indonesia. And so you already from the beginning have lived a very non-traditional life.
Yeah.
So can you like describe like, like you grew up in your mom's home most of the time, but I still feel like you were very much exposed to like your Asian culture and your Asian side. But what was like life growing up with like parents in different countries, different cultural, socioeconomic backgrounds? Like what was that like for you growing up?
I think it was always, like everybody that's like mixed or like Hapa, that's what they call it, Hawaii. It's like you're always trying to identify with one side or the other. So it's like always that continuous battle of like you're too Asian for your white friends, you're too white for your Asian friends, you know, so it's like you're finding that like just trying to find yourself and get comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest battle. But I've always, I don't know, I've lived, like you said, like a very non-traditional life. Like I knew my family didn't have much, and I was like, well, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
So I started working at 14. I wasn't old enough to work, so I found a Chinese restaurant that would hire me. Not family owned. Because they would pay me under the table. And so I started realizing as I'm working at this Chinese restaurant, like they only let me work the register and clean the floors. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to put this tip jar. I'm going to bring this $5 from home and put it there. Sit it there. So I would like talk to people. I learned how to like make paper cranes. So, you know, when they're sitting there, I would have some made. I'd be like, oh, I made this for you.
Oh
and people would be like, oh, this is for you. And I'm like, oh, this is how this works.
See, and sometimes you really just have to create those opportunities that are in front of you with what you have. Like you could have easily been like, I'm too young to work, or I can only, because they're only going to pay me under the table to clean floors and work the register. That is all that I can do. But you take those opportunities and you create like other avenues for yourself to be able to like, that's amazing. Like not many people would do that. And I think that is translated into your adulthood too. Now, like with going back to visiting your dad in Asia, is that what's kind of sparked your love for traveling? Or what was it for you?
I think it definitely would be that. Like I remember my first opportunity flying, I think they messed up something on the seat, so I had to sit by myself. And everybody was worried about me because I think I was like maybe like 9. And I'm like,
how long was the flight?
Oh, like 20, like 20 some hours. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. I'm like, I love this. Like all the stewardess were bringing me special like treats and stuff. And I think that's kind of where I've just been unafraid to just go. Yeah. And that's why I got into like solo traveling, because I'm like, you know what, I'll invite people, but I'm not the one to not go because nobody will go with me.
Yeah. I know, and it's so, like, if you guys, like, look at Chrissy's Instagram, just all the different places that you've traveled to just by yourself. Like, I remember it was, like, around the time, like, we were both, I think, leaving the club, and, like, you were going to study abroad in Asia, and I see this video of Chrissy. She bungee jumps off is it, not the Tokyo Tower?
Macau.
The Macau Tower. And how high was that?
I think 300 meters. It's the highest in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's not like, okay, I've jumped off the stratosphere before, you guys. That is like a glorified zip line down. Chrissy was strapped at the ankles and she straight up fell 300 meters by choice, okay, and survived and lived to tell the tale.
But these, again, are calculated risks.
Okay, explain this. Calculated risk. Like, explain calculated risk to me in your head.
Okay,
because
no, this is the thing. Like, this is why I like extreme things. I like to do, like, I like Tough Mudders. I like doing bungee jumping, skydiving, because these are things that are going to bring up that level of fear, but you're going to make it through. Like, it's still like, there's certain safety mechanisms. It's like, not like I'm going to go, jump off a bridge and hope for the best. It's like, this is calculated.
Just 300 meters straight down.
But then when I come across a situation, I'm like, well, if I can do that, why can't I do this?
Okay, fair.
So it always kind of like leads that up to like, that's why I like to say like, well, hey, I survived this, so why can't I survive that?
So what is like the gnarliest thing that you've ever done that someone like a normal person with a different level of calculated risk in their mind would take?
I honestly don't know. I'd have to think on that one. Yeah, I think there hasn't really been anything crazy that I have said no to.
You've skydived.
Yeah.
Is there something that you haven't done yet that maybe you do have a little bit of that fear stirring within, that's not held you back from doing it, but you're like, oh, this is like, I'm going to do it, but it kind of scares me to do it?
I think the one that I did hold back, but we ran out of time, was in Switzerland.
Okay.
They have you bungee jump out of a cable car. And so that was the one I really wanted to do, but we ran out of time.
Did you run out of time, or did your fiance and your best friend Kylie tell you that there was no time?
Yeah, it was probably that one.
That's the thing. So Chrissy, yeah, she is like the person that will invite you to travel with her, but just know she's going to want to do something like that, jumping out of a cable car.
Like poor Kylie, the first time, she had never been to Asia. She never went anywhere. And I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going on this solo trip to the Philippines. Do you want to go? And she's like, I've never been to Asia. I'm like, just book it. And I have everything planned. We literally flew in, got to Manila, flew straight to Donsol. It had been like 20 some hours. And then we literally got on a ship. This is like the small southern tip of the Philippines to go swim with whale sharks.
Did you tell her that you're going to swim with whale sharks? Or you just were like,
kind of gave her the idea.
To this, like, southern tip of the Philippines?
I don't think she understood the full gravity of what we were going to do until we're like out in the middle of the ocean. It's just literally the boat captain, us two, and like a spotter. So he would spot, and once the second he saw the whale sharks, because you're in the deep ocean. It's not like Cebu where...
Yeah, Cebu, it's kind of like...
the area where it's like
a petting zoo.
Yeah, so they're actually going like deep ocean. So this is where they like naturally migrate. So I wanted to have the, real experience. I didn't want to like feed into like all the other, way of doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. And he's literally like, go, go, go. And you throw on your mask and you just jump in. And you're like swimming in the middle of the ocean, like the deepest part. And you're seeing these whale sharks just of like massive, incredible, beautiful creatures.
Did you observe them from like afar, or were you like right next to them?
No, like right next to them.
So I did the Cebu one.
Oh.
And I got great pictures from it, but the thing that was really overwhelming about doing that one was you get 30 minutes in the water, and to get the shot, like you can pay for the fishermen to like take pictures of you with the GoPro, but to get deep enough with them, they're literally shoving your head in the water to keep you to get you to go as low as possible. And it was so overwhelming. Like for a minute I was borderline drowning, because I'm like, I don't have time to come up to the surface to like grab some air. It's very chaotic because I want everyone to get the pictures. But yeah, that was a completely different experience than one for what I probably would have done that than doing. But you live and you learn. You get it figured out. But yeah. So I know like before meeting Dan and before starting your businesses, like originally the plan was to like live in Asia, but you had actually lived in Asia prior to this. Like was it during undergrad or was it during
undergrad?
Yeah. So you got to live in Japan. Okay. So tell us about that experience.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I tell anybody, if you have the chance, even if you don't have the money, figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's kind of why I've lived the life I've lived, because I didn't always like leave it up to, I don't exactly have enough money. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it work.
Yeah. And I mean, you didn't just like study abroad and like in Japan and like live in this city. Like you were living in like a smaller town. You're running a bar with one of your best friends out there. Like tell us about that experience, because if it's Chrissy, it's not going to be like your normal go around of something. It has to be very non-traditional.
I didn't realize that reflected my life as much as it does until you brought that up.
When we're actually talking about it? Yeah, you're like, this is just normal. I just live this way. No, but
just the way it works.
No, like I've had friends that have studied abroad, and it's like, it's almost like you kind of live in like a study abroad bubble. Like you live in student housing and you'll go to school and all that, but like you were like creating a life like out in Japan. Very like uniquely.
I just use school as the excuse.
Okay, but what was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this like a bar that was like owned by the Yakuza?
It wasn't. It's just, okay, so I went to school in Tokyo, so I lived like the city life, and then one of my best friends, she lives up in Chiba.
Okay.
And so I would take the Shinkansen, like the high speed rail for 2 hours and live on the weekends with her. She's like a surfer. And so in the towns, so it's very different. Like the Yakuza, all of that is very immersed into the community. They're all business people.
Okay.
And so, I mean, her bar, so she wanted to start opening up a bar.
Describe the Yakuza for those who don't know who the Yakuza is.
I hate to use any of the like negative connotations, but it's kind of like Japanese mafia.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
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 And so, I mean, that's like the best way, but they're not always bad.
Yeah.
Like it's, a lot of people are just business people. They're very immersed into like everything. And so she opened up her bar. And I ended up helping her open it up while we were out there. So I was going to school during the week, living like staying up all night, not sleeping, because I'm like, I need to get every single minute of this like study abroad. And then on the weekend, we opened up her bar, and then we were doing a beach bar. So it was such a crazy experience too. But they would all come in, and it's kind of crazy too, because I always forget that I'm pretty heavily tattooed.
Yeah.
But it's all coverable, but I'm in a bikini.
Okay.
And so every time they see me, they're like, and a lot of my work, so I got some of mine done traditionally in Japan.
Okay.
So it's not even with the tattoo machine, it's like hand tapped in.
What is that? Yeah, like what is that method? Okay.
Tabori, yeah. So, and it's by one of the like old masters, Master Horitoshi. And so they would come in and they would see my tattoos. It would be like these like business looking guys coming in. And then they're like, oh, then they start pulling off their clothes like to show me like their full body suits. And I'm like, this is my life.
This is my life, just the Yakuza showing off their body tattoos. No big deal. But how fun. Like, how old were you during that?
In my early 20s.
So cool. Yeah, like, you know what most people in their early 20s are doing right now? I know what I was doing in my early 20s. Not that.
You really haven't lived yet, Nick.
I haven't, apparently. I know. You know what's funny? As long as Chrissy and I have been friends, like, we haven't really been on an international trip together.
Mexico.
Like, yes, Mexico. Yes.
Which doesn't really count.
I love you, Mexico. And it's just, I haven't been to Europe with Chrissy. I haven't even been back to Asia with Chrissy. And I feel like that would be a whole nother experience. Like,
so our next podcast is going to be broadcasted from Asia.
That would be so cool.
Right now.
That would be so cool. Yeah, we can base out at my mom's like beach house in the Philippines.
Oh yeah,
that would be sick. But yeah, I just and so after this exciting life of living in Japan and traveling the world, now we're owning a business. We're here in Las Vegas, and I feel like this has just been a whole nother adventure. Like,
it has.
You know, it's not like, you know how they always say, like, okay, yeah, like when you're young, like that's when you can like do all the crazy stuff and like, you know, live and travel and do all the things before you quote unquote settle down. Well, I feel like even with you, you know, finding your partner and you guys like starting your businesses, like this has been like an adventure all on its own. So like, can you kind of talk about how you guys even started this logistics company, how your, how your truck driving school even came to fruition? Because I've known a lot of the different businesses that Chrissy has owned, and like truck driving school was not at the top of the list. So yeah, walk me through that. 'Cause it's not like, it wasn't in the plan.
No.
Yeah. But here we are.
But that's the biggest thing, is the plan always has to pivot.
Yes. Yeah. And you've been you are really good at that. You're really good at pivoting. You're really good at, like you're not so stuck on something that you're not willing to make a change in order for like you to be able to move forward in life, you know? Cause you could have easily been like, okay, yeah, like I finished my master's and I put in all this time, like, now I really do need to go and finish the path to go work for the government. And, you know, even if it didn't make you happy, but because you were so stuck on the plan. I feel like people get so stuck on the plan that they kind of lose their vision a little bit.
It's a sunken cost fallacy. That's what the term is called.
Okay.
It's like people put so much time or like effort into something that they don't want to let go.
And what do you think, like, what was it within you that kind of gives you like that ability to be so unattached to the point where you can do that? Like, cause it's not like you're, like when you pursue something, like you really do put your all into it. So how do you, like, in counting the cost and in also being able to walk away from something in order to pursue something that you know would be like a different direction to go in? Like, how do you like do that? Is it in your calculated risk, like evaluation? Is it, what is that for you? Like to be able to move on to something different?
I think it's almost just transitioning the skills that you already have. So as polar opposite as all the things that I've done, they've still opened doors into that next thing. So even though I'm not doing specifically what I went to school for, because right start of the pandemic is when I ended up consulting for that tech company. So I was consulting for that artificial intelligence tech company. I came in, I don't know where I get these ideas, but I'm like, okay, this is a company here that I've like been watching, pursuing. They have offices in Shanghai, they have offices in Japan. I was like, I speak both those languages. I was like, I need to figure out a way to get myself in.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know if the clubs are reopening. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I posted as, I'm going to be a consultant for you. Yeah. Have I been a consultant for a tech company before? No. I don't know where I got this idea, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to consult for them. I'm going to teach them how to like build up their sales. They're a publicly traded company. I had only done like small scale companies. I would open my own little tech company during COVID for UVC lights.
Yeah.
I was doing like all these little projects. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it work. So I did that for them. And then they were so impressed by what I was delivering that they offered me a director position. So somehow I got myself into a director position for a publicly traded tech company. And I was like, this was never even part of the plan.
Yeah.
But then that kind of put me in a space where I realized if I ever wanted to grow my business to that caliber, this is the seat that I need to be in.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing like, hey, you know what? Half the time, these people, like it's publicly traded. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time you're winging it. A lot of the time you're just kind of figuring it out. And so that kind of gave me the confidence. I was like, okay, when I'm ready to kind of take that step and pursue something full time and my own venture, it's okay that I don't know. It's okay that I don't have an idea of how to do it, because that's what everybody else is doing on a way bigger scale.
Yeah, and how were you able to push through like those feelings of like imposter syndrome, like those feelings of like, I don't know what I'm freaking doing, and like did you before an interview, during having the job, like did you take that time to like even research like, okay, how do I make this happen, how do I do this, or was it a lot of trial and error?
It's a lot of research, honestly. Like I always want to go into anything as prepared as possible. And I do that for like interviews, companies. Like I'm going to be able to tell you everything about, your company.
Yeah.
Because I never want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's fair.
And so I'm like, I do enough research to where I feel confident enough to say I can get myself to that first step. Yeah. And then everything else, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with starting your own company and being able to like run this business, where did you even begin on like figuring it out? Like,
oh, that's where I left off. So when I was doing the tech company, at the same time, I was importing, exporting. And so I was already kind of getting into logistics, but I was getting things manufactured in China, developed my own products, and getting them shipped to the US.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was on the logistics chain to some degree. And then COVID happened. My partner, he had a lot of properties, and the people that were renting the properties couldn't pay for it anymore. So then that kind of impacted our income. And so we're like, well, we got to figure out something. If we're going to get into an industry, especially during, unprecedented times, we got to find something that is unaffected, unaffected by recession, unaffected by COVID, whatever may happen in the next few years.
Yeah.
And that's where kind of just logistics started coming up.
Yeah. And it isn't like a sexy thing to talk about, and I think sometimes people do get so caught up in like, ooh, like I want to like work at a sexy tech company, or I want to have this like, super like great sounding title, or, reaching a goal or whatever. But sometimes a lot of where, the success in like building a successful business is found really is in like the mundane things. And something like logistics, or even, we've talked about like storage units or something, like it's just so, to me, it's boring. Like, I know you can kind of geek out to it, like if it's in your day to day, but like, it isn't like this, it doesn't have to be such an exciting thing, I guess. Like, cause I remember when I was like in my first career in marketing, or like when I thought I wanted to get into marketing, I just thought like, oh yeah, like I want to work on like red carpets and like the glitz and the glam and like all like that foo-foo like glitter stuff. But it's not always like the thing that's either going to bring you closer to the life that you want, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think where we just started getting into it was the same thing. We both just started immersing ourselves. Like, I'm like, I don't know anything about this. He's like, I don't know anything about this. I'm like, well, we better learn.
Yeah.
And I think what's helped us in business too is the fact that we know every single thing from the inside out. So, like it came down to where he had to go get a CDL, which is your commercial driver license.
Yep.
So we were the ones in the truck. So we wanted to have, just a trucking company, we're going to sit over here, let the trucks do it. But we knew that in order for us to get to that point, we had to know how to fix the trucks. We had to know how to run it, how to do every single step of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wasn't going to be successful. And that definitely saved us, too.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting? So we actually watched like a couple episodes of Richard Branson's new documentary on HBO. And something I found interesting, like he's a billionaire. He started all of these, like these companies, from like the record company to the hotels to the airlines. And like he's had no experience or really interest in a lot of these things. I think he just hired the right people who did have a passion for music, who did have who did understand like the airline industry to like make it to where he is. But in your case, like, I think that's so cool that you said like, okay, yeah, if one of our drivers is out or we have an extra call, like you guys have done multiple runs even. And can fully understand like from a driver's point of view, from like the mechanic's point of view, from even like HR and payroll, like you guys have really learned like the ins and outs of your business. And like that is like super like I respect that a lot, because I think because a lot of the times you find these heads of these companies that like they know it's like a gold mine or a moneymaker, but they know nothing about it, and then they don't succeed. And it's like, well, no wonder, like you have no hands in your business. You really are just like, oh, this sounds a good idea, and it's gonna make me a ton of money. And when it doesn't, it's like, well, like you had no idea what was going on.
And I think it's almost everything, even if it's successful or unsuccessful, typically unsuccessful, kind of leads you and opens those doors to the next thing. Because like the trucking was not the end all be all. Like we kind of came at it right at the height, and then this past year has just been bad.
Yeah. And can we talk about, I mean, we don't have to talk about like super intimate details about it, but I think this is important to share, because I mean, you find success in something, and sometimes like it's not always rainbows and sunshine, right? Especially when it is starting your own business. So when things started to shift, like gas prices, like who would have thought, like that kind of stuff, like what are some of the things that you as an entrepreneur have learned, like some of like the belly aches of owning your own business?
Man, it's crazy because all the companies I had done prior had always just been solopreneur. I love being a solopreneur. I'm responsible for myself.
Yeah.
And anything that I make a mistake on it only affects me.
Yeah.
Having employees, whole nother ball game. Like it's scary because I'm like, if I make a mistake, if I don't do something right, not only am I not going to eat, I now take the food off of all my employees' tables, you know, like their kids can't eat because of that. Yeah. And I kind of feel like you assume the responsibility. So it's a lot more stressful, especially when times get tough too. Yeah. And so I don't know, it's been crazy because it's like such a caliber where I'm always like, oh, when you reach, a certain, like you have enough commas. Yeah. When you get a company, build it up to like 7 figures. But I never realized that overhead for a company can be just as much as that. Yeah. So I'm like, oh great, I built this company up. I'm like, we're making 7 figures, but we're making no money.
Wow.
And so that was the crazy thing for me. But at the same time, that's where it kind of inspired, like when we first started everything, it was so hard for us to find a school for him to get a CDL. They didn't care. They didn't really seem to like give him the info that he really needed to pass. Yeah. And I was like, we could do this. I'm like, I could build a school. Yeah. I'm like, and it was crazy because the wait for it was like, I think you had to wait like 4 months to even get into a class. Yeah. Wow. And so that's always been in the back of my mind. And then I've kind of always held on to it. And I was like, we really just need to have a school. Yeah. And I think that's where kind of like trucking led us right into that, where we finally, I worked on it for the last couple of years. And I have no idea. I don't know how to, teach somebody to drive. I can't even drive a semi-truck. I can around like the lot. But that's the extent of it. And so it was just the same thing. Google, YouTube, figure it out.
You know what's so cool? Like I listened to a ton of podcasts, and one of like the I guess ongoing theme like surrounding like a lot of these successful entrepreneurs that have built like successful businesses is that a lot of it came from like a personal need that they needed to fill selfishly for themselves, but they just took on that responsibility to emerge into the marketplace to be able to fill their need and realize that like other people have that need too. So it's like, yeah, like, you know, entrepreneurs are paid to solve problems, and it's like, it's cool that this idea came from a personal issue.
I never even thought of that way.
And you're able to take it into your own hands. And I feel like that in itself, like, you know, I feel like it can be such a testament to a lot of entrepreneurs that like find success, is that they really just needed to solve a problem for like their own personal life, and they just took ownership of it. They didn't just like kind of like sit and like sulk in it. They took ownership on their own hands.
I didn't really even think about it that way. But yeah, it was kind of completely that too. But then it's interesting that you brought up Richard Branson too, and how a lot of the things that he did wasn't really what he was inspired by. So I felt like the last couple of years, like me working on getting this company up and running for the trucking, doing all that, I really haven't felt fulfilled.
That's interesting.
So it's like I felt like I was always kind of lacking what made me feel like complete. And I think it's because I was building up this company, working so hard and in the day-to-day, but it wasn't giving me what I needed out of it. And then when I opened the school, we were able to like work as a community resource.
Yeah.
So now we're like partnering with all these different nonprofit organizations.
Really?
We do stuff with like Help Us in Nevada. I was just with Eric Command with Metro.
Wow.
And we're looking at, you know, it's like one of the most second chance friendly type of industries. So it's like one of those things that people, you know, if either they can get out of their like socioeconomic class, be able to like go up that next level, or if, you know, they made mistakes in their younger life, like they still have an opportunity to make good money, do well for themselves. And so that's where we started doing our own scholarships. And now in this past year, I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to feel more myself.
Good.
Like I'm feeling like more fulfilled. And I'm like, you know what? I found what is at the core important to me. And even though it's totally unrelated to like driving a truck, I was able to tie the two together.
Yeah, actually creating an impact, which again, in full circle, like with you getting certified and like working with like nonprofit organizations and yeah, you're such a generous person and you have such a giving heart. I feel like being able to tie in your business with impacting the community, like what a perfect like relationship that you've been able to create with that. Because I think I'm honestly kind of at a place myself where, you know, I used to, you know, tell myself like, okay, it doesn't really matter what I do for work, like as long as I live a fulfilling life outside of that. And, and, you know, and I find myself even, like questioning like, okay, like, am I in the right place, like with work? Like, you know, I'm spending a lot of my time, at this job, and it's like, it's really had me rethinking, okay, well, what is meaningful work? Like, do I just only do that as a hobby, like giving back to the community as a hobby? And I'm exploring that right now. So I'm really curious to see like where that brings me in 2023. Cause I really do feel like when it comes to like alignment, in a lot of areas, like to me, it's not just like, okay, yeah, like alignment in my values or alignment in like my family or this future that I'm building with my future husband, like, but it's really in all areas, and I'm trying to get that all synced. So
is that your word for the year?
Alignment, you know, that's kind of like keeps coming back actually, because it's like, it really isn't just about, like just being on the straight and narrow. It's more so like, how can I be my truest self in every area of my life? Because I feel like, you know, like while you're trying to figure out life, you know, it is easy to kind of like mold into like, okay, yeah, like I'm this person when I'm with these friends, or like but it's like to live authentically, like that was never me. So at the same time, I think and maybe this happens like as you get older, you know, like now being in my early 30s, like being able to really stand firm on what I believe in, being a lot more vocal, because I think too, especially coming onto like such a public place like the internet, you just get so worried about like, if you say something, if it's going to come off wrong, if it's, if, you know, the whole cancel culture stuff, like I want to be more bold in like really standing firm in what I believe in, and not in the place where I'm like trying to hurt people, but also not being afraid to like speak what I believe is true.
But there's so many people that are going to resonate with that.
Yeah. And I think that's where that alignment piece comes in too. It really is just being my most like authentic self, but not like, you know, being like a mean person or rude or whatever, but really just like, I guess, yeah, like living in alignment with my values, but also like making sure that like my life matches like what I say. So yeah, I guess alignment is my word of the year.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's very fitting.
What would you say, like apart from being able to get back to the community, like what are other ways that like fill you? Because I feel like, especially as women, like I feel like that's something that we can find challenge with, is like filling us first, because we are so willing to like give up things that fulfill us to help other people. Like it's just in our nature as women, I feel like. And so what would you say has been filling your cup up these days?
I think it's getting back to remembering what's important to me. And that's taking care of myself first off. Like you said, I think that's one of the biggest things that happens is you're so busy making sure everything else is good, everyone else is good. You kind of forget, and then you can only give so much.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a big thing. Like for me, my like de-stressor, the best thing I can do is work out.
Okay.
And
so what's your favorite thing to do?
Probably I like anything like high intensity.
Yeah. She sure does.
So like I'm getting back into martial arts. So that's
good.
that's
that
making me
so
happy.
good.
Yeah, martial arts, getting back into running, like weightlifting, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's like almost my Zen time.
Okay.
But that's kind of making me just a little bit better, like being able to like reset. So I go on the next day even stronger.
Are you like a workout first thing in the morning kind of girl? Do you like a midday at the end?
Morning, but it's not always doable.
Yeah.
The thing is, that's the thing when you start a new company, it's like you're wearing so many hats. So I have to be there, you know, the first one to be there, the first one to, or last one to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of just fit it in where I can.
Any new travel plans for 2023? Because I know that's also something that you value.
Yeah, don't excite me. I'm trying to be so good. It's so crazy because I spent so much.
You did travel a ton last year, though.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be good because I did just start a company, but at the same time, I'm like, I have 18 places I need to go this year.
18?
Okay,
what's top
but
5?
I'm not. I think the big one, it's so crazy. So I'm starting to get more into, I really want to go to Ecuador because I want to go to the Galapagos.
Interesting.
We really got inspired kind of to go to Antarctica. So I think that's...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Antarctica. I wanted to do Turkey this year. And then Colombia. I
am dying to go to Colombia. Yeah. Maybe I'll go with you.
Yes, please do. But I think that's kind of the thing. Like that's why I'm okay with going hard and like working nonstop, because I always have had like whatever little break I had, like even in grad school, college, anything like that. The second I have a week-long break, I'm like, I'm going all over the world.
Yeah, that's the thing about Chrissy too, is that like as calculated as she is like, oh, like she's going to maximize her time in a place. Like it could be like she'll text me and be like, oh, want to go to Iceland next week? Like, what?
Yeah,
when give me like a heads up on like buying tickets or something.
This is exactly what Katie was getting at me for, because every single time she's like, you're totally the person that's like, hey, what are you doing next week? Do you want to go to Korea?
But it's so true, and she will go whether you go with or without her. Any other exciting things happening in 2023 that you're looking forward to?
I'm just getting through the day. I know. What about for you?
I feel like, well, one of the exciting things I think for me is like getting married.
I was going to say.
I'm excited to be getting married. I'm excited that, for us to start our life, like with him, like moving in and building a home together and building a business together. Like there's so many exciting things around that in my life, which it's like, this is something that I feel like I've been like perpetually single. Like I've never really had a boyfriend, had a few relationships in the past, but it's crazy. A lot can happen in a year, and
that's exactly what I was thinking.
That's exactly what happened, but it's so exciting.
I like that. She's like, this. That's exactly
it's so
what
exciting. Yeah, I think that definitely I guess I never really thought about it, but like I never was like, oh, when I was younger, like, oh, I want to get married and I want to have a family. Like I had serious doubts about having children at one point. I think because of like my lack of like being in a ton of relationships, like I didn't know if this really was like in the cards to me, to be honest. Like it sounds so silly. So I think because it is like my reality now, it's like something that I've never been excited for before, that I'm like so excited for now. And I'm so happy that it's him. Like I tell him all the time, I'm like, I'm so happy that you get to be my husband, because I'm just like, I couldn't imagine it being anyone else. And like, he's just so amazing. Like he just, I could go on and on about him, but we're not going to on Chrissy's episode.
Which is completely different than a conversation we'd had like a year ago when he wasn't even in your life.
I know.
And all that happened.
I know. It's so crazy. But it just, it goes to show, like, for me and like what I believe, like just, like how much God can do in your life, like when you least expect it, and when you really are in a place of like just giving everything to him. You know, I think that last year was like such a testament to what can happen when you just stop trying to control everything. Like I am like a recovering control freak, and to be able to just like release that and just like let God do his thing, and just being in like such a season of like obedience, which I know can trigger a lot of people. It was almost
like just acceptance. Just accepting what came to you.
Yeah, and it was saying yes, but I think that's where that obedience part came, right? Because it wasn't like my brain trying to come up with like, okay, well, if I say yes to this, like, what if this happens? It really took a lot of faith, I think. But yeah, I think everything good in my life right now, between my fiance, this house, my puppy, like just so many good things that came from last year had nothing to do with me. I give like me zero credit to it.
Yeah, like, if you would have told me last year I'm going to be a dog, fiance, and house homeowner, I'd be like, Nick.
You're like, sure, whatever. No, yeah. I'm really excited for, just where this year is going to take us. And like, I'm excited. Hopefully it's not going to take us another 4 years to film another episode, but like just to kind of see like where life continues to take us. Cause I'm definitely so grateful for this friendship. Like you've changed my life in like so many different ways. Like you've made me a better person. Like you have opened up like even like my worldview in so many different ways that I don't think you realize. And so I'm just super grateful for you. Like, thank you for coming on. And I just am excited for more conversations like this.
Yes. And I am beyond grateful. Ever since that moment you walked to my house and you're like, I'm looking for a room. And I'm like, you found your home.
Yes, I really did. You know, at that time, like I was looking at apartments. I was trying to figure out who else I could potentially live with. But it was like when I went to go visit your house and like see where I could put, like it felt like home the second I walked in.
Well, and it was supposed to be like hey, here's the room, this is it. And then we ended up in like an hour and a half conversation on entrepreneurship, on like all these different things.
Yeah, and we were like, okay,
how like
I found the girl I'm gonna live with. And like, and it's so funny too, because we really did think we would live together forever until like one of us got married. I remember like when it was time for me, like my sister and I like moved in together, and I was so sad. I mean, I loved living with my sister, and it was like it was needing to happen. Like, you know, Chrissy and Dan, like we're like starting like they're like really starting their life and their business and stuff. But at the same time, we were both like, I never want to part ways ever. I want to be living together forever.
I was like, can we just live in like a compound and everybody can be neighbors?
I know. So yeah, no, I'm grateful for like just, even I'm grateful for like the work that like even you put into like, you know, keeping us in touch and like making sure we spend time. Like, I feel like we both live such crazy lives that like, you know, to like know that like you make our friendship our priority, it like means so much to me, because I feel like we don't really, it's hard to be friends when you're adults, I feel like.
It is. But it's
Yeah.
like the friends that are going to be in your life are always going to be in life. They understand.
Yes.
Like they're never going to question like, oh, why haven't I heard from her? It just
Yeah.
picks up like where it stopped. Like we could not
Yes.
go, we could talk without, I mean, it's never going to happen, but we
Right.
could go without talking for a year and it would be like we never stopped talking.
Yeah, so I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for tuning in, guys.